There you go.
This is where we sit and watch the numbers. Come on.
Hilary, how was the skiing yesterday? Were you out yesterday or the day before?
No, I worked yesterday. The day before it was pretty good. Still, we didn't ski in Tuckerman's. I think that was consistent. We were on Hillman's and it was like every turn was different, like good wind slab, punchy wind slab, ice, pretty much all the way down. So, but it looked like the bowl was great that day.
Yeah, for sure.
Just went more snow loaded in there, so it was more consistent.
Your climbing pictures look great.
Oh yeah,
I was like,
up stovepipe.
yeah, that's great.
And Beth Ann, how are things going in Vermont over there for you?
Pretty good. Actually, Wolfie and I harvested some corn on Suicide 6 yesterday. Easy mile. One solid lap. So that was nice. It's very muddy, but we still have some snow.
Does he go in the front or the back with you, Beth?
Oh no, he has to be in the front for now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they can't go in the back until they're like 6 months and can hold their head because yeah, it's all floppy right now. But,
And did Sierra go with you?
no, we have daycare on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. So she was at daycare.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to manage both
Yeah.
in that zone.
Yeah. At some point, I'll probably be able to carry her in the back and him in the front, but for right now, keeping it safe so I recover fine.
Yeah.
How old is your other, Sierra?
She'll be 2 next week. Yeah.
Nice. So we're just waiting on a few more to join us. We'll give them a couple more minutes as we see the participants joining.
Yeah, and I think probably start at 7:05, and if people filter in, and I think oftentimes registration is a lot more optimistic than real life, so numbers are a little bit lower.
Sure. You're like the man behind the curtain.
Yes, I'm getting emails and texts from people. Hey, can I have the link to get in?
I'm just curious, when I'm unmuted, can you hear the baby crying or no? No?
Nope, sounds good.
Papa's gonna deal with that one.
I have 6th grade math happening, so if anybody needs a review in decimal and percentage conversion, you can listen in. Give them one more minute.
Beth, are you teaching this semester?
No, I gave birth right after or during February vacation, so I'm off for the rest of the year, or I opted to
great.
take the rest of the year in good
Did
old
you-
USA, where you don't get maternity leave for very long. So
Did you teach before he was born? For a spring semester or whatever?
yeah, so
January.
I just taught until he came. He was a little late, so the plan was I was going to stay as long as I could, so I did. And yeah, and we were in person all year. We just had we only had like 2
Oh, wow.
people at my school in total, so yeah. But no, not going back. Last time I went back for like the last 2 weeks, and I think this time it'll be nicer to just go back for the next school year. So.
Well, it's 7:05, so we can officially begin our night's conversation. I'm Sarah Davidson. I'm the advocacy manager for Granite Backcountry Alliance. I'm an outdoor recreation attorney and advocate, and just want to welcome all of you here tonight. Your screen is filled with some powerful female faces, and we're going to have a pretty awesome conversation tonight. Want to thank the Avalanche Foundation for hosting this event in partnership with the Mount Washington Abbey Center, GBA, Friends of Tuckerman Ravine, and Patagonia as well. Topics are going to vary. We've pooled some pretty good ideas ranging and covering snow science, social pressures in the outdoors, confidence building tactics, children. We have one Wolfie with us tonight with Beth, and mentorship and leadership roles for women in the backcountry. So our conversation is going to be roughly an hour, and then we'll turn it over to question and answers. If you do have any questions, please put them in the question and answer box instead of the chat. Bridget, who works with the Avalanche Foundation, will be monitoring those questions. So feel free to fire along throughout the night. If you have a question that you would like to have a specific panelist answer, please write that person's name. That would be really helpful. At the close of the question and answer, we do have a fun raffle, so stick around. We have a number of items to be giving away, including some tickets to our Granite Backcountry Wild Corn event, April 3rd. So we're just going to get right to it. The ladies are going to introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Abby.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Abby King. I live in Fryeburg, Maine, right at the edge of the Mount Washington Valley. And I spend most of my time at my big girl job, which is with the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust, where I work as the conservation lands manager. And so luckily I get to spend a lot of time outside for that job, putting some of my orienteering skills to work and my tree ID skills to work sometimes. And I also, just for fun on the weekends in the winter, work as a backcountry ski guide for a company called Backcountry Babes, and we run beginner backcountry ski tours here in the White Mountains, as well as AIARE courses. Yeah, I came at this by way of lots of other skiing around the country, and happy to be back in New England.
Hi, I'm Beth Schwartz. I live in the Upper Valley in Windsor, Vermont, and I am a middle school Spanish teacher in Hanover, New Hampshire. I got into the backcountry, kind of started as a weekend warrior. I used to live in Massachusetts, where I was a teacher, and went up to the Whites every weekend. So finally in 2011, I took a break from teaching, moved up to the Whites, hiked the AT the following year, worked for the AMC for a few years. I was the caretaker at Tuckerman Ravine for a while. And during that time, I got a bunch of certifications. I got my AIARE 2, EMT, Wilderness First Responder, Leave No Trace, Master Educator, among others. And then in 2018, moved down to the Upper Valley for my husband to pursue a career in respiratory therapy. So that's where we're at now. And any weird noises you hear, as we already showed you, belong to this guy. I've got a almost 2-year-old upstairs, and this little guy, and I am flying solo tonight because my husband's still at work. So bear with me with any strange noises or if I have to peace out for a second. So looking forward to the conversation.
Hi, I'm Hannah Lucy, and I live in Conway, New Hampshire. I grew up here in the White Mountains, learned to ski here, really learned to ski in the backcountry, like skinning up hiking trails when I was a kid and telemark skiing and doing that sort of thing. And I work here now as an art teacher at the Bartlett School. And I've also worked as a ski coach in the Valley for quite a while, cross-country ski coach. I've also worked as a rock climbing guide, so kind of dual interests of climbing and skiing. And for me, backcountry skiing is where everything comes together, all the climbing skills and the skiing experience. And, you know, I've done that a lot of different places in the country, but I really love the skiing here. And I'm really happy to be part of this conversation. So thanks for having me.
My name is Hilary Mccoy, and I live in Jackson, New Hampshire. I spend most of my days working as a physical therapist here in Jackson, and then when I can and on weekends, I like to backcountry ski, mainly up in the Whites, and then this year learned how to Nordic ski, which was really fun living in Jackson. But my background is I grew up as a ski racer, and then we moved to the North Conway area 7 years ago, and that's when I started to ski more in the Whites and do more backcountry skiing. And it's been really fun and rewarding to learn a big new skill set. And again, as Hannah said, really excited to be part of this conversation and get more women out in the backcountry. And my friend and I started a retreat just for women called Backcountry Bliss. And so that's more of a introduction to backcountry skiing and including yoga and a weekend long retreat. So that's my contribution to the backcountry, I'd say.
And I'm Elizabeth Burkowski. I'm a research assistant professor down here in Durham, New Hampshire at UNH. I got into backcountry skiing as part of the end of a NSF project, and that took me up to Alaska, and I was hooked after that. But most of my research actually takes place here in New Hampshire. I study winter climate change in the northeastern United States. I also serve on the Protect Our Winters Science Alliance, and I also serve on the American Alpine Club's Climate Task Force.
Awesome. Thank you. My background is similar to Hilary's. I grew up ski racing at Sunapee here in New Hampshire, and then raced in college at Colby. And it wasn't until my sophomore year that we drove from Waterville, Maine down to Tuckerman's Ravine to ski for the day. That was my first intro into the backcountry. And not surprising, I came down from college with 3 guys and I was left alone hiking for my first time until I caught up to them at the Bull. So I am wondering, you all touched upon it a little bit about your background with skiing. I know we have some split boarding here as well, but how did you make that jump into the backcountry? For me, I dove in without any training, and I'm wondering if you have a similar experience or if you went and got your AIARE certification first before you really started exploring. And I'll have Abby start again.
Yeah, so I started backcountry skiing also on telemark skis back in college. I don't know if you guys know, but AT actually stands for already telemarked. And so I started doing that in college because I had grown up alpine skiing and quickly realized once I was a poor college kid that I wasn't going to be able to afford to keep skiing my whole life at resorts if I didn't figure something out. And so my college was offering like a backcountry ski course. And so I got some telemark skis, and I think we just skinned up at Greek Peak or something like that. And did that for a long time. And then I worked for the Appalachian Mountain Club here in the White Mountains in the hut system, and started meeting people that were like skiing, you know, tucks in the summer and skiing the snowfields in July and August, and hiking skis up on their pack boards. And I was like, what's that all about? And so I started skiing in the Whites on telemark skis, and quickly got on stuff that was much higher and steeper than I could handle on tellies. And so eventually made the leap. But, you know, the first couple times I skied at Tux, I was either on telly gear or I was hiking up with my Alpine skis A-frame to my backpack, just like everyone else. And, you know, and then I really did what I would encourage a lot of people who are beginners to do, is I just figured out a lot of places to ski in the backcountry that weren't in avalanche terrain. And I did that for a really long time, for years and years. And I never skied at Tux or up high until it was like April or, you know, really May. And it was only until I started skiing up high earlier and earlier in the season, slowly over the course of many years, when I realized like, hey, I think I need some avalanche education. And so I took an AIARE 1 course, and then went and moved out west and worked as a backcountry ski guide with very little training out in Tahoe, and then came back and have been continuing to apply those skills. So that's how I came to this.
So I grew up alpine skiing at Attitash as a weekend warrior up there with my family. And I knew of Mount Washington and Tuckerman Ravine my entire life, but it wasn't until my 20s that I really got up there. It was actually my younger brother who was at Unity College at the time. And actually I'm a Colby alum as well, Sarah, I didn't know that about you. And my younger brother told me about this thing called backcountry skiing because I loved hiking and I loved skiing. So I decided to try it out. I, for one winter, got some Alpine trekkers. For those of you that don't know what those are, they're these ancient-ish large devices that you can use in a regular alpine binding in order to tour. So I got those to see if I was going to like AT skiing, and sure enough, I fell in love with it. So pretty soon I just got my own setup because that just made way more sense. And very similar to Abby, I started out doing the CCC trails like Black Mountain Ski Trail, Doublehead, doing lots and lots and lots of Sherby laps and Gulf of Slides ski trail laps before I really got into the steep stuff. And then the first time I got into Tuckerman Ravine was, I think it was Cinco de Mayo one year. So definitely started in the spring and eventually met some folks who kind of served as mentors in a way. When I moved up to the Valley in 2011, that was probably when I really started spending my winters getting into avalanche terrain. And I think it was the next year that I ended up getting my Avi 1, and I got my 2 a few years later. I think my skills really developed when I was the caretaker at Hermit Lake, because during that time I was able to spend many days out with the Avalanche Center. I'd go out, it was kind of a win-win situation, especially if one of them was working solo. They got a partner and I got to glean lots and lots of skills and information from them. And yeah, I just kept building on what I knew and trying to push myself further. So I guess that's my sort of roundabout way that I got back there.
So kind of like I said before, there wasn't really a transition for me. I really have more of a Nordic background than anything else. And so the trickiest part for me was learning how to alpine ski, which I'm still working on. But I went to college in Montana, and that's when I took my first avalanche course and kind of had first formal education, because all of a sudden I was, in avalanche terrain and needed that awareness. And then when I moved back here about 6 years ago, I realized how much awesome terrain we have around here. I was able to kind of take that knowledge and start looking at this terrain with new eyes, and skiing some of the steeper stuff around here. Yeah, so that's my journey in a nutshell.
So my first time, I think, truly backcountry skiing was in college. I went to University of Vermont, and it was in the spring. I think it might have been actually the Inferno day, but that was before I knew what the Inferno was. And a bunch of UVM and Dartmouth ski racers, we decided to have like the 8th carnival. So we all carried up bamboo poles, and it was super socked in. Like I didn't even know what the bowl looked like after that day, but we all hiked up and skied on our slalom skis. So I think that was truly my first backcountry ski day, but I didn't really know the lore or much about the Tuckerman. I mean, I'd heard of Tuckerman Ravine, but had never been. And then I lived out in California for a while. So my first time in the backcountry was going with Andrew up to visit his brother in Alaska and skied a few trips up there. And so where we were skiing, it was, immediately an avalanche terrain. So my first experience learning some of the skills and how to use the tools was his brother, Mad Dog, who, was really thorough, very experienced mountaineer and skier, would put us through these like long crash courses before we go skiing on how to use everything. So that was my first experience starting to learn about just how to be in avalanche terrain and everything to look for. So my first backcountry skiing experiences were out west. And then when we moved back here, initially we thought, when you hear of Tuckerman Ravine, you think of spring skiing. And so the first year we were here, we mainly just skied up there in the spring, and then started to learn that people skied up there all winter. And that's when, that having skills to manage avalanche terrain was definitely more important. And so, between Andrew and I and, some friends, we, found some mentors and slowly picked away at getting more comfortable and learning up there. And then I've taken an AIARE 1. And so that was really reinforced a lot of the components that I'd learned just through experience. And now, go up when we can and when we think it's like a little bit safer, but it's been really fun exploring all the different ravines and just so many different aspects of what the whole White Mountains have to offer for backcountry skiing, whether it's glades or, the Sherby. And it's really just really stunning, and really appreciate really everything that this area has to offer. So that's my backcountry journey.
And I had made the switch to snowboarding when I was in middle school. So I think I'm the only snowboarder here. Is that right? Maybe, I think so. And I had done Tuckerman's a couple times in the spring when it was safe, and I mostly just snowshoed up with it on my back. And it wasn't until I had an opportunity to go on an ice boring expedition in Alaska, and they were like, "Oh, well, you're going to need skis." And I was like, "Well, I don't ski." And it was then I learned about splitboarding. This was back in 2013. So I learned to splitboard on the internet because there was a nice woman. Her name was Liz Daly, and she had a great video of just how to put your skins together, how to trim them, how to put your bindings in alpine mode and put them in snowboard mode. And it was wonderful. It was a really good learning experience for me. And I don't know, something about it, learning from a woman made me much more comfortable. Regrettably, Liz Daly was killed in an avalanche. She was a professional splitboarder, and she was killed while she was filming down in Argentina. But she made a big impact on my life. And I don't think she ever knew that, but here's a shout out to another Liz out there who really loved splitboarding. And I'm still in my phase of like, I'm only going when it's safe. I'm only going when it's 0% chance in terrain that is treed, when it is spring conditions. I have been on a couple hut trips out west in Colorado. Those were always with friends and family who knew exactly what they were doing. I'm just not at the point where I'm ready to venture into any sort of avalanche terrain, but someday soon I'll get there and be ready to take a course when I do.
Awesome. And, I just want to encourage everybody to remember that backcountry doesn't mean avalanche terrain necessarily, right? So you could go to a resort and ski the trees at a resort. You could work your way into out of bounds at a resort. You could hit up some of our GBA glades that are not, and those are great options for newcomers to the sport or people honing their skills or going out with the family. So you can still be a backcountry skier and not ever set foot on Washington. So just keep that in mind. But there was a question that came in, and Beth Ann, I'm hoping that you can answer this with this next lead. You've skied big lines on the Whites, up on Katahdin and the Chick-Chocs. And so twofold question for you. One, how can you build confidence in this discipline so you can get to that point? And it leads into the question, and the question and answer is someone was asking, well, can you ski the lower bowl at Tux if you don't have, an AVI class under your belt? Can you give advice to people on how to make those decisions and how to listen to their intuition when it comes to backcountry?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the can you ski the lower bowl part. And it's going to be a big, it depends. The thing about Mount Washington, especially, that a lot of folks tend to forget or not realize, is that you can have a 60-degree, sunny, beautiful day in the Mount Washington Valley, and then full on winter conditions up in the ravine. So you can't necessarily plan on being able to just go up there and have safe conditions, given the day on the calendar, for starters. And even the lower part of the bowl, you're in the run out of many avalanche lines. So I think when you kind of get that word from the bulletin, the avalanche bulletin that the Mount Washington Avalanche Center puts out every day, when they finally say, okay, we've got that spring corn cycle, everything's low, and it's been that way for days and days, then maybe you could venture up there and ski something that's a lower angle in the bowl, but you will then have other hazards, like the 1,000 other folks above you, and ice falling down and stuff like that. But I think if you're smart about it and you're very aware of what the conditions have been, then maybe. But I think you should never just blindly go up there, like wake up in the morning and out of nowhere say, all right, I'm gonna go ski Tuckerman Ravine today, having not been up to date with the conditions. And the other part of the question, as far as gaining confidence to ski bigger lines, I think part of that is just the practice. Like the more you get out there, and for me, the way my mind works, I'm always just trying to push myself to just see what I'm capable of, whether that's with skiing or running or childbirth, what I'm able to do with my body. So as far as like skiing the big lines in Katahdin, stuff just worked out with that trip. And actually I was reflecting on this trip the last few days, and I was staying in the bunkhouse there, and it was 6 men and 4 women in total in the bunkhouse. So that was like pretty good numbers as far as women to men, because you don't usually see that. We were chatting about that earlier, that like maybe you have like 20% women in a backcountry group. So that was cool. But anyways, as far as like skiing those lines, it was like the right group of people, the right conditions, and feeling very comfortable with my partners, I guess, is a huge part of it. Any of the larger lines I've always skied with at least one very trustworthy partner. Like I've never gone into those sort of lines solo, and it has to be someone that I know, or a small group of people, preferably 3 at most, maybe 4. It has to be a group of people that I know I'm very comfortable with, that if one of us is feeling off about it, that will probably all step back, and that I know like will have my back. I've definitely been in lines where I've asked my partner, okay, like you have to tell me where I have to make my next turn, because my pants are going to get very wet right now. Like I'm really scared sort of situation. So definitely just being more confident in my own skills, seeing what I'm able to do, and being with the right group of people in the right conditions have helped for hitting up lots of those lines.
Awesome. Thanks. And Hannah, I know this year you took an AIARE 2 course. I'm wondering if you could speak to that and your experience with that course. And I'm interested in, Beth just gave the ratio of her bunkhouse trip. Like, what was the ratio of men to women in your AIARE 2 course? And has that kind of set the stage or lit a spark for any further training for you?
Yeah, so I think I said before, I've taken a few AIARE courses kind of over the last 10 years or so. And one I convinced my mom to take with me. So I think that was the only one that had another woman in it. Maybe, I'm sure the avalanche awareness I took had some women, but yeah, for the most part, it's very much male dominated. And I think the more striking thing is every instructor has been, male as well. And that has part of the reason I'm happy to be part of this discussion is I've really started thinking about that lately, in taking these courses and what it means to learn from, you know, a man or learn from a woman, and how that impacts the participants in the course and just the overall perception of women's role in the backcountry. And so I think that it definitely, taking AIARE 2 this past winter, it was kind of an accident that I ended up in the course. And although I had been wanting to take it for a long time, and after taking it, I was like, well, how do I think I could do this. Like, I would like to become an AIARE instructor. And so I've been looking into that. And everybody I've talked to has been really receptive about that and really encouraging. You know, I think there are a lot of great AIARE instructors. I know quite a few on the East Coast, and you know, they're all men. I don't think there are really many, if any, women who are taking that role. And I think that the same is true for, you know, snow rangers, forecasters, guides, with the exception of Abby. But you know, there just isn't a presence around here of women in those leadership roles, and I think that's something that's really important. So
awesome. And to build upon that and Beth's comments, one of our listeners picked up that Beth used the word mentor and finding mentors, and I think Hilary used that as well. And Abby, turning to you, like, can you touch upon how to find mentors in this sport for women? I know that, you know, you lead backcountry ski tours. You're AIARE Pro as well. What are your thoughts? How can a newcomer or someone that's like us, been around for years skiing, find that connection?
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of a twofold question because, you know, on the one hand, you kind of need like a crew, or at least just a few friends that, you know, as Beth was alluding to, you feel comfortable going into some potentially risky situations with. And, you know, it's kind of like that thing where it's hard to make friends if you don't already have a friend. So I think having friends to ski with can lead to you being put in situations where you might meet those mentors and might meet people like, you know, like Beth Ann was totally like a mentor and an inspiration to me as when she was Tuck's caretaker, and I would come up there and see her there in the, you know, with the radio, like out there with all the guys. So, you know, I think, well, Backcountry Babes, you know, the reason that I started Backcountry Babes out east, I don't own the company, but I'm friends with the owner, and I when I lived out west, and I said, I really think that there's a demand for Backcountry Babes courses out here. And I think a big reason is this question of like, how do you meet other women to go skiing with? How do you meet other women to learn from and to serve as those mentors? So that's part of what I'm trying to do with Backcountry Babes, is to help cool women meet other women that want to do this. Or people that identify as part of the community of women. So, I mean, one way is to take a guided course with a friend, or just head out with a friend and just try to expand your circle that way. And then there are a couple Facebook groups where you can, you know, like people will type in like what their tour plan is and ask for any friends. I'd love to see like a women specific group for that, but even just the backcountry touring in the Northeast, you know, has plenty of women in that group. I did notice that a lovely young woman asked a question on that Facebook group a few days ago. And when I checked yesterday, it was just a woman who asked like, hey, I'm going up to Tuckerman's for the first time, you know, this spring, like any advice? And I noticed when I checked, there were 62 comments and 5 of them had come from women. And so that's disappointing to me, which is part of why I try to serve in the role that I serve in. And I would also really echo what Hannah said, like AIARE stands for the American Institute of Avalanche Research and Education, and we don't have a single female qualified AIARE instructor on the East Coast. And so a lot of people have been trying to groom me for that role, and I got so far and then realized like I don't want to spend every weekend of the winter teaching avalanche courses, and that's just not my personal interest. But I really would love to see a woman or more than one in that role. And so if anyone has questions about that, AIARE has scholarships available for women and other people in underrepresented groups to get into the course, the track, and there's other scholarships out there that I've benefited from that I could recommend to you. But it is hard. It's hard to find female mentors, but they're out there. And if you are out there, you're gonna come across them. So.
Well, and Hilary, I'd love for you to chime in, because when I moved to the Valley in 2015 from Southern New Hampshire, I didn't have any ski crew. And I signed up for Hilary's Backcountry Bliss because I just needed to meet women to go out in. And it was fantastic. And now Hilary and I ski, and I've been in touch with a handful of the women that Hilary's connected with me with. So your program has been successful in that community connection. You've been doing it for several years now, and I see you're connected with returning retreat members.
Yeah,
well.
that sort of the birth of that was similar to what Abby was finding, was trying to bring together an all like female community. And I learned, I ended up spending a lot of time with guys, as we all often do around here, doing different pursuits. And I had gone mountain biking with some friends from college who are all women, and I was the like least experienced one. And it was the first time I had this like all female experience where I just felt I came out of that weekend so much more confident, and watching and learning and seeing them do it. It was just such a different perception than I'd ever had of just trying to keep up with the guys. And, then, being all around women and they were just empowering that I'd never really been in a situation where I felt that power of just a group of women. And then we started Backcountry Bliss, and, the whole community piece has just been so much more than I could have thought. Just watching so many of them out skiing together, going on ski trips together, and then just being rewarding on my end to see that. And, Bridget and I, and Sarah's done it. And, Bridget and I went up and skied a little bit in the bowl this year with Joe. And, that was her first time up there, and that was really cool. But I would never have known Bridget or had these experiences if we hadn't done Backcountry Bliss. And it's just, I don't think about it as much as I should, but just that community is just been really neat. And so, yeah, it's been really cool.
Awesome. And we're going to circle back to that community building towards the end too in a further discussion. But Hannah also brought up some other key roles that she would like to see women in, in weather forecasting and working at the avalanche centers. And we have our own guru snow science legend here with us. Liz, could you, talk to that about that, your role with snow science and weather trends and forecasting, and how you can encourage skiers to become more knowledgeable on those weather conditions, and any knowledge you could share on your perspective as well.
Sure. Yeah, so to be clear, I'm not an avalanche forecaster, and I also don't have any avalanche training. My role as a snow scientist is primarily through the lens of climate science and how our conditions are changing here. And what I want people to understand is that the winters that we have today are not the same as what we had 100 years ago, or even a generation ago. Many places in the Northeast have crossed a critical threshold from being below freezing to above freezing for their average winter temperatures. And this goes right through the state of Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, they don't have much avalanche terrain down there, but it's a harbinger for what's coming here, especially if we don't act. We're doing some research right now with some colleagues up at Dartmouth, and unfortunately, what it's looking like is that wet avalanches are going to be the future in Mount Washington if we don't act and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We're going to be seeing much more winter snow coming as rain instead, and that really impacts the snowpack in a very negative way. We can also think about how many days per year we're going to be having. 100 years ago, we had 3 weeks more of winter. And 100 years from now, we'll probably see up to a month less of winter. So I think what we're going to be seeing in terms of trends is that more people are going to be trying to cram their winter and their season into a smaller period of time. And those that really want to get out and get it might be pushing the envelope. And likewise, on the other end of that thing, we're also we're finding ourselves in historically unprecedented conditions. And avalanche forecasters are finding it harder to predict when we get outside that envelope, outside that historical precedence. And when we get outside that, that's when you really need to start making the judgment calls on your own and with your group. And I think this is something that we're going to be seeing not just in the Northeast, but in the West as well. And this is what they're already seeing when they had that historical cycle last year that just blew people away in terms of how much snow was falling and then just how huge the avalanches were. We had a hot trip canceled. That was very much, we were looking forward to it and we couldn't do it. We could not pull the trigger and say it's a go. But in terms of like what you can do to advocate, I work for Protect Our Winters. So be sure to check out the Protect Our Winters website. If you've never actually learned much about them, they have tons of great resources about climate. I highly recommend checking out any of the reports that they have. I'll put some in the chat there for you guys to look at. And if you're also interested just more in about climate change in the Northeast, I'm putting another one in here. This is the Hubbard Brook Research Foundation, with whom I co-wrote a report on how winters are changing in the northern forest. So this goes from the Northeast out into the Midwest. So if you're a Nordic skier, this is very relevant to you as well.
Awesome. And Liz, you mentioned like the national Protect Our Winters, but we also have a regional Protect Our Winters New England team here. One of the members, she's almost ready to give birth, Becky Carpentier, but she was a Backcountry Bliss alum as well, but they're a really active organization here. And I think they're Portland, Maine, but they have a lot of events too. So again, if you're looking for a community, that's another great organization to check into as well. And now that I have Liz and Beth, both of you, one of the questions that came in on the chat is, did any of us ski while we were pregnant? And I'd love to talk about that role of children. I just got back from Katahdin on Monday and I took my 11-year-old and he was able to summit and ski some pretty good lines as well. And so I've been where you have all been. Your children are a little younger than mine. I know, Beth, you were skiing while pregnant, right up until Wolfie came. So if you could talk a little bit about your experience, and with the eyes towards the future of how we can, as women, serve as a role model for our children and our children's friends, and start creating that mentality that anything is possible and that we can start young.
Yeah, so with both pregnancies, my daughter was born March 23rd, and my son was born February 15th. So I skied straight through both of them. With him, I actually went in on the 13th to be induced, and we skied that morning. And by skiing, I mean, we have a local T-bar here at Mount Ascutney, and our almost 2-year-old has been skiing it all winter with just the harness on. So that's the speed I was going, and definitely listening to my body. And I did some backcountry skiing throughout as well. Like I said, I'm a teacher. We had a snow day. I think it was heading into my 39th or 40th week of pregnancy. So those unfamiliar with pregnancy, that's the end. So we had a snow day from school, and my husband and I, he was off that day as well. So we went off skinning, and the plan was for him to go as high as he wanted. I'd go as high as I wanted. And if I had to stop, I would just wait, and he would turn, like I'd wait for him to come back down and get me. This was at a closed resort, so it was pretty mellow stuff. But to really listen to your body, like that day, like I had to stop halfway up because I got a side stitch and I was like, I'm not going to push it. So definitely listen to any cues you're getting from your body, but it's whatever you're comfortable with. Like the first pregnancy, I did ski the resort a bit more, and like my husband and I just had this like plan where he was like my human shield and he would ski above me. But it's worked out. Like I always wore a support belt when my belly was big enough. And something really cool happened this winter as far as like potentially like being a model for like my children and other kids. So it was quite obvious that I was very pregnant as I was skiing, and my daughter was clearly a small child, and people were like, how old is she? And I was like, oh, she'll be 2 soon enough. But we met some other toddlers out there this winter and their moms, and like a couple of them had said to me like, oh, like seeing you out there like that pregnant, like that gave me the confidence to take my kid out there and see what she's able to do. And there was this one day, like there were like these 3 little 2 and 3 year olds like shuffling around on their skis. So that was sort of cool. So I am hoping to just keep modeling what it is that we as a family like to do as far as backcountry skiing and skiing in general. And I just want it to be the norm for our kids. Like we did get out, all 4 of us last week, actually. My husband carried my daughter and I had the newborn, and my daughter just knows, we call it ski hiking. So we're going ski hiking, and she's in the backpack, she got her skis, and she knows that when we get to the top, she gets out and gets to ski down. So I think just giving them lots of opportunities will be good, and like modeling like the safety stuff along the way. Like even if I don't feel like I need to wear a helmet as I ski down the bunny slope when it's just the 2 of us, like I should, that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping to keep doing that, and probably connect with Sarah after this and find out how we do the next phase when they get a little bigger, because that's been the other thing, is just finding other folks with kids that have shared interests, to see how they do things, what gear we need, and that kind of stuff. So maybe I answered the question. I don't know. I feel like I was babbling.
And I guess I come from a little different, I was on a different side of pregnancy. I was only like 8 weeks along in winter time with my son. So I did go skiing and it was pretty normal. I slowed down a lot. I just wanted to make sure I didn't hit any bumps or anything. It was my first pregnancy. And with the second one, you know, if takes a while to get pregnant, you might find yourself being more protective of your pregnancy and being I was much less risk averse, or much more risk averse with my second pregnancy. And I was like 40 weeks at, I guess I was in mid-February. So actually I think babies might have the same birthday, but she was a year earlier. So I did not ski when I was that pregnant with my second at all. I did a lot of Nordic skiing, which was fantastic. It's super fun, great exercise. And now that they're this winter, I have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I towed them both in a sled, which was kind of fun because I remember back on that ice coring expedition, I had kind of been told I was the only woman on the team, that maybe I shouldn't go up to the ice core drilling site because I can't haul a 50-pound sled. And there I was just hauling 70 pounds on my back. So on that, yeah. But yeah, I think it's, having the right equipment. So like having a sled with the rigid handles, with the poles on it is really helpful. And just knowing what your limits are, what you feel comfortable with, like there's a whole range of levels that you can do with your kids. And our son learned how to snowboard last year, and he loves it, and he can't wait to get out there again.
Yep. My son was born on February 12th. So I was skiing, pregnant. But my dad, my husband, and I have 3 brothers. They would form this little like circle diamond around me, and I was in the middle skiing down Cannon, and it was a sight to look at whenever I would ski with my dad. And then my only other point is finding ski clothes for very pregnant women is not fun. So I was wearing overly large. That's the downfall. But I think if you're asking the question about skiing during pregnancy, you're probably an active, fit person. And just again, listening to that same intuition, making the decision to go into the backcountry, making the same decision to boot up, I think listening to your body is the way to go on that. And Liz, there was a couple of questions before I move on. regarding your background, if you could touch upon your schooling history. They said they're really awesome what you're doing, wondering if, again, if you're working at a university or private organization, and then any recommendations for getting into snow science professionally or as a career path.
Yeah, no, so I actually started studying snow at University of New Hampshire in graduate school. In undergraduate, I was looking more at like fossils. I was a geology major. And I took a couple years off. I also worked on sailing boats. So I don't know how I ended up with snow. But I was very motivated to study snow because of the impacts it was having on the ski season. It was something I noticed very granularly, like, wow, that was a really crap season. Wow, that was a really crap season, and wanted to understand why it was happening. So I took a master's program at University of New Hampshire from 2005 to 2007. And then when I was in once I finished that, I did a PhD after a couple of years as well. And I'd say that, in terms of graduate school, I think for undergraduate, you really can be any sort of major. You don't have to be a science major to go into graduate school in sciences. It helps, but we see students that come in from the humanities and they are excellent writers. So if you were a humanities major, like coming into a science school at the graduate level with strong writing skills can actually be a benefit. And then in terms of like how I got into this line, it was just finding mentors that were interested in this line of work. One thing you should note is if you're going to graduate school for sciences, you get paid to do that. Not much, but you do not need to take out student loans to do it. I did because I wanted to pay for housing, but you can technically do it without doing that. And there's a lot of different options. I mean, there's schools all over the US that do this. I work at the University of New Hampshire now, and it's just a wonderful place to be working. Unfortunately, if the climate trends continue the way they're going, I won't have as much snow to measure here. I'd probably want to be further north to make those measurements, but we do the best we can here. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of opportunities. It doesn't always have to be like the physical snow science. There's also sociological impacts of snow. So there's a lot of folks that I've been working with who try to understand how people feel about climate change and snow, for example. And it's a unique perspective when you can actually start to look at the human component, because we face it, we're all human and we're all experiencing changes in climate very differently. I know for most of us, if we have those 70-degree days in winter, like that's an off year or an off day for us as skiers. And it just feels weird when it's in the middle of winter. Yeah, I think there's plenty of opportunities out there, and graduate schools usually, to get a job in snow science, I think graduate school is a good option.
Awesome. And since this is being hosted by the Avalanche Foundation, safety is first and foremost in their minds when it comes to conversations like this. And there was a couple questions in the chat. And, maybe Hilary, you could start us off. One of the questions was, can you ski safely by yourself in the backcountry? And if so, would you, or how would you do that? So that's one part of the question. There was another question about, the progression of skiing in the backcountry. How do you have any, and this could be for anybody, any tips or tricks, how you can be comfortable starting off skiing in the trees? Like, how do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think skiing alone is in something, I mean, again, I feel like all these answers, that really like depends on where you're going and your ability level, your comfort level, and the conditions. Going and like, I feel comfortable myself skinning up and skiing a Sherby lap. Like, I tell people where I'm going, I've done it enough. Like, I feel comfortable doing that. But that's because I've done it many times, and it's relatively safe in terms of like, you can go up and not be so, not worrying so much about avalanche terrain. But, I make that decision that if, I were to fall or get hurt, then, there isn't someone right there, right? But I'm taking on that risk myself by skiing alone. I don't often do that. I very rarely go ski alone ever. And so that really comes down to what you're willing, it's a risk you're taking to go alone anytime. And then if you're going into avalanche terrain, that's like a whole nother level of risk. And if you're thinking about it like in a broad picture, if you're going alone and something happens, whether or not you're with people, but if you're alone, then there are going to be a lot of other people coming and looking for you, and they might be putting themselves at risk. And so I don't know if I'm totally answering the first question, but skiing alone is something you shouldn't take lightly. And it's not like you're at a resort. You can go ski alone and ski a lap, and there's ski patrol right there. There are probably other people. So if you were to fall and go into the woods, maybe someone saw you. So that risk isn't as high because you're around other people. But as soon as you go alone, you have to know that you're going and doing this, and you might not be found. And there are ways that you can feel a little more secure. Like I know people who ski alone and they go on these missions and they bring their Garmin InReach, right? But that is almost like a false sense of safety in a sense, where people, I have my Avalanche beacon, and I don't know. It's a tough conversation. I know I don't practice that. Like I would never go skiing anywhere where there's any avalanche risk, or just Beth Ann was saying, pushing your game and taking these risks of more intense lines, whether or not the snow is relatively safe or not. But yeah, it's all a personal decision and shouldn't be taken lightly, I don't think, especially skiing in the backcountry. And I'll tell my mom I do a Sherby lap and she doesn't like that. So, it's like a real thing. Like once you leave that ski resort, it's on you, really. And so that's sort of a different conversation. Again, something Beth Ann was saying is my experience skiing in the backcountry is you find a group of people that you are cohesive with, you trust, and you start to be a little picky with who you surround yourself with, because you have to be selfish. Like it's very real up there. It is, I don't know. And again, I think I'm going off on a tangent, but Mount Washington is this anomaly. It's this like enigma that anyone can kind of access, yet every day, so many so many people are doing things we probably shouldn't be doing up there because we can get there. And so I think that's an important piece to hit home is it's intense. I don't know. So that's where I think finding a ski, even if you just have one partner, find that ski partner. I feel like I look around and see other groups of people out here skiing, and it seems like people gravitate towards each other in terms of how they ski, what they like to ski, what they're skiing on. And you kind of find your group, whether, and you get comfortable with risk tolerance, and you have to be a little selfish in who you go skiing with when you go up high. So anyway, back to skiing alone. I wouldn't do it. It's just a backcountry. And then the second part, what was the second part? Sorry.
Some non-Avi terrain, how to get comfortable skiing in the trees.
Oh, like in the trees. Yeah, I mean, I think, I had someone come to Backcountry Bliss, and she'd only skied out west, and we were skinning up the Gulf of Slides trail, and we get to the top, and she's like, where's the snowfield? Like, she's like, wait, we're skiing back down the hiking trail? So a lot of people don't realize that, often we're just skinning up and skiing down hiking trails or CC trails, and, we love it, but it's some of the flat, like, I guess easier ones, like, the Sherby or Gulf of Slides can get a little narrow, but going and just being aware that it's, it's not groomed, and the terrain is very variable. It's going to, very condition dependent, and just go with an expectation that it's going to be very different. And you're probably going to be on slightly different equipment. Backcountry touring gear is a little different than like frontside alpine gear. So just go into it with an open mind that, you might not be making the same perfect turns you are on corduroy, but have fun with it, and go slow. And again, find people, like find groups, like if you're women, Backcountry Babes, Backcountry Bliss. We were talking the other day, GBA glading days. Go to a glading day. You're going to meet people there. Wild corn, you know, you're going to definitely find people there that are like-minded. So find people that have done it and then have them help you work, get through that. But anyway,
Yeah.
I'm rambling too. But
No, Abby, go for it.
I just wanted to say one thing about skiing trees. Yeah, it is definitely a struggle to find beginner backcountry terrain in the White Mountains that's open enough for people that aren't as confident. I have spent a long time researching that in the field. So, you know, one piece of advice, if you are looking for something that's more open, is to look for Forest Service roads or other Class 6 roads that might be closed in the winter that are wider, and you can kind of pick around the edges and try to get comfortable in a couple trees on the edges of those places, but then you still have the more open slope that you can come back to kind of check your speed and make turns that are more comfortable. And you can do the same thing at the resort. I would say that I didn't really feel comfortable skiing like tight trees or even like moderate trees until I was a ski coach at Sugarbush in the mid 2000s. And I was really forced to ski the trees like every day over and over and over because I was supposed to be coaching kids on how to do that. So that's how I got good at it. So you can go to a ski resort and take a lesson with an instructor and ask to be put with someone that can ski in the trees with you. And lots of resorts have gladed terrain. And they will teach you how to look for the spaces in between the trees rather than to look at the trees. And then with anything, repetition, but the CCC trails in the White Mountains are definitely places where you can kind of experiment, and the GBA glades too, are places where you can get wider trees or, slopes with trees, but where the spaces in the trees are a little bit wider than maybe something like Gulf of Slides or like, even in like low tide conditions early in the year, even sometimes the GBA glades can get real tight. And, so you have to plan your trip knowing that. So yeah, just a plug for taking a lesson at the resort, really.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Abby. With my kids, we always talk about look for the windows when you're skiing through the trees. And I think if you're looking for an non-resort introductory spot, I think Hypnosis Glade, that's here in Madison. It has a 400-foot drop. It's family friendly and it's an introductory glade. And you could do several laps there. We call them lunch laps. And that could, that repetition that Abby talked about, I think is key. Another question that came in, and Hannah, I'd love for you to touch upon it. One of our listeners mentioned that, while all female Abby courses are fantastic, she found that they were often more expensive than just a typical AIARE class. And she's wondering if you have any thoughts on how we can have, a more inclusive course socioeconomic wise that is people can afford, and how we can level the playing field for more newcomers. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, the women's only courses are awesome. And I think, like Hilary was saying, they can provide an environment where people might feel more comfortable, more supported. I think it's also, it's great to have spaces for women. And I think it's also really important for women to kind of push into these other spaces that, I guess that's my motivation for trying or thinking about becoming an AIARE instructor, is to bring more of a female presence to that, because there isn't a reason that it should be more expensive, for these other courses. But I also think looking into scholarships, Abby was talking about some scholarships for women, and there are, I think, across the board. I think back to rock climbing guiding certifications. There are quite a few scholarships that maybe make up the difference for different types of courses. So that's something to look into. But yeah, I think any opportunity. I work in a school and would love to see, these opportunities being woven into school if that's ever possible, and trying to, I feel so fortunate to have grown up in the White Mountains and have had all of these opportunities like right at my fingertips. But so many kids don't, even kids who live here. So I think that's a really important, I don't really have an answer for that. But I think it's a really important conversation.
Yeah, I agree. There's a national organization called Winter Wildlands Alliance that is kind of bringing all these issues to the forefront, and they have the snow school campaign for children, how just to get them to love snow in winter and get them exposed. I always say that backcountry skiing is an exclusive sport in and of itself, because you don't really necessarily learn how to ski in the backcountry. You ski in a resort, you need that equipment, and then you buy a backcountry kit, and then you're taking the courses, the certifications, and all of a sudden you're thousands of dollars in, and not everyone can do that. So yeah, I would love to see more scholarships and programs as well. Beth.
Yeah, talking about schools, I do just want to mention, so I don't think I previously said, I'm also on the board of the Avalanche Education Foundation that's putting this on. And one of the fantastic programs that we do, we were unable to this year because of COVID, but we put on an intro to backcountry skiing course specifically for youth, and it's scholarship. It's all scholarship, so it's not necessarily all female, but we've always had at least one, if not many, ladies in the group, and that's for middle school and high school age teenagers. So definitely look for that in the future if you have a teenager at home that's interested in getting into the backcountry, and we provide scholarships for the course and for gear rental for kids if they need that for that program. So that's through the White Mountain Avalanche Education Foundation. One of the great things that they do.
And I just want to add, just being so close to Ski the Whites, there's been a huge push in some of the brands bringing on kid size, like 110 to 140 length skis. Like DinaFit sends these skis, and it's the ski skin and binding like already just all assembled. And I know Andrew was talking with the ESSC, which is the local winter ski program, and they were talking to him at the beginning of this year. And there isn't a lot of kid age, like elementary school age equipment, but there does seem like there's a pretty big push with the ski companies to increase that. And I think one of the, I don't know, it's a beer company. It might be Athletic Brewing. Someone's donating a bunch of money, and I think it might be part with MWAC, and it's all for kids equipment that'll be like free, I think, to rent next year. So there might be this like new kind of influx of elementary age touring equipment, which would be really awesome. And again, it's just like, it's an access thing that would be really nice to see. Hannah, maybe you can run the elementary school ESSC backcountry crew, that'd be awesome.
I guess the other point I wanted to make is you don't need the latest and greatest gear to do this. And I think that's something that it's so easy to look at, all the social media stuff and all of the advertisements from different companies and get this idea that you need to look a certain way or have a certain type of equipment. And, my like fondest memories of backcountry skiing are just like Nordic skiing in the woods. And that translates really well to, being able to ski more serious terrain later. So I think any way you can get outside, any type of skis you can put on your feet and start moving around in the woods, that's really all it is. It doesn't have to be this like perfect image of, the latest and greatest gear. It's just like getting out and skiing is the most important thing.
I love that, Hannah. And one last question that came in from the audience that I think is a great one to end on, and it we only have 5 minutes, but she's asking is, as we start to push more serious lines and go bigger in the backcountry, have any of you ever had issues with being taken seriously in that pursuit?
I wish we had more than 5 minutes for this question.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've experienced this a lot in all my outdoorsy pursuits. I'm sure everyone on this call has, and that's why we're all here, because we all care about being treated equally when we're out doing the same thing that the boys are. When I hiked we have a couple through hikers on the Zoom, but I'm sure maybe Beth has some stories too, but long distance backpacking, I had many experiences where I'd be hiking with a group of guys and we'd pass someone, and the person we passed would say like, have fun, or like get after it, or like go for it to all the guys. And then when I passed, they would say like, be careful, or like, or they would try to like hike in front of me as though they were going to hike faster than I was. And when the laws of physics, like that's not possible. If I caught up to you, that means I'm hiking faster than you. And there was just this questioning, this like not being taken seriously theme of both of my through hikes. And when I was a ski guide out in Lake Tahoe, I worked for a powder cat company. And so I was sitting in the back of the snowcat all day with our clients. And I had people, I call it wilderness mansplaining, where that's like mansplaining, but it's like in the wilderness. And so it's like even more just like egregious, because especially as a guide, like to have someone explain to you, how your avalanche assessment works, or like navigationally, like where to go, when you're explaining it to your guide that you have paid money, to tell you what to do, is talk about being not taken seriously. I think it's the same, unfortunately, like this is just something that's true of not just backcountry skiing, but of all things that all of us do. And it's, I think to Hannah's point, it's really important to have women in leadership roles and in teaching roles, so that over time that creates a culture shift. So yeah, you just have to do it better and look better and go faster and be better and prove them all wrong.
I just want to echo what Abby's saying, that this is true in many professions and in many lines of work. And I feel like one of the best things that we can do is also ask our men allies to be allies and to stand up and not let you take on that labor, that they need to step in. When they see it's happening to you, they need to step in and be like, dude, don't treat her like that. That's not cool. She's the expert here.
Beth?
Yeah, so I guess as far as like with my partners in the backcountry, and maybe this goes back to what Hilary was saying about being selfish when you're selecting your partners. I guess I think I've always been taken seriously from them if I've said I had a concern or something like that. And by them, I mean, it's almost always been myself with other men in these groups. Sometimes another woman as well. I've done a fair bit with Hannah out there. But as far as with my group, I think because we just know each other and we jive really well, that's always been a very positive experience. But I've definitely, especially when I was caretaker at Hermit Lake, probably once every stint. So I'd be up there for 10 days at a time. Someone would come into the cabin and I'd magically appear from behind the curtain, and they'd be like, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting this big burly man with a beard. And I was like, well, this is what you get. So I definitely had a lot of it there. And when I would give advice, especially older men, would kind of second guess me, like, how do you know what you're talking about, and that sort of stuff. But I have been fortunate with my groups skiing, at least, to not have them look down on me for my gender.
Awesome. Well, that brings us right to 8:15, everyone. Joe's going to come back on in a moment for a raffle. We have a good number of participants still here, so hang on to see if you won. But I just want to plug a community building event. It's April 3rd here in the Mount Washington Valley. It's called Wild Corn. That's put on by Granite Backcountry Alliance, and we have a whole number of sponsors that will be there as well. Tickets are on sale on our website. But myself, Bridget, I believe Hilary will be in attendance on that day in some sort of fashion. So if you're on this call and you want to come out, we would be more than happy and willing to chat with you. It's also a great opportunity we have 12 different demos. You can try out equipment, learn some tips and tricks on uphilling, and just be with like-minded people. So that's April 3rd from 9 till sunset. Jason Spooner Band is playing, and we'll be raffling off a couple of tickets to that event as well. And I want to thank all of you ladies for sharing the last hour and 15 minutes with us. I appreciate your time, your thoughts, your commitment to advancing the sport of backcountry skiing. And you're all mentors to the 100 and so people listening. So thank you for taking on that role. And Joe, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Wow. That was fantastic. Thank you all very much for all that insight and thoughts around backcountry here. And well, I guess it was pretty much here in the White Mountains. So I'll get right into the raffle. I've done kind of behind the scenes random picking of numbers based on registration. So I know there's a lot of people that aren't here. So I'm going to go as fast as I can, but some of these I don't have first names, I just have email addresses. So the first item we're going to do is a purple Storm Stride jacket from Patagonia. The rub is it's just a size small. Patagonia is pretty much out of stuff. So if you are picked and you're not going to fit into a small, you can keep it, or you can pick another raffle prize. So I guess the best way to do that would be to jump into the chat if I call your email address. So the winner of the purple Storm Stride jacket is PRABAAN@yahoo.com. And if you're out there, maybe Bridget, maybe you could actually, if anyone who wins or gets called, can you just jump in the chat and say that, all right, looks like Anita. All right, sweet.
Anita, and she can use a small. Awesome.
Perfect. All right, and let's see. Second one is BARB Perry 56. I'm guessing that's a Barb or Barbara.
Is that another jacket, Joe?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's actually a Storm Stride pants in small. And okay, Barbara Perry, no show, or Barbara Perry. All right. I'll go to the next one. WWITHY@gmail. And if anyone wants to send them an email and let them know that they are potentially going to win. Actually, if you're not here, someone count to 5. All right, moving on. Next one is ET Petit. So ETPETIT@gmail. Are you out there for a pair of Stormside pants?
Oh, she's here.
All right.
Oh,
Does
I'm
that size
excited.
work for you? This is crazy.
I think I'd be a good auctioneer. I'm getting very excited.
Small. That's a small size on the pants. We've got other prizes if that doesn't work. All right, cool. So that is ET. All right, the next is, let's see. The next is a gift card for Fulcrum Poles. And let's see, that is lucky number, let's see, Nemesis 256 at Gmail. Anyone out there?
Whoa, Patrick.
Hey,
Thank you for
Patrick.
joining.
Let's see, that would be 4. All right. Next one is, this is for a presidential ski guide signed by the author, and that is Maria, ma.dryak@gmail. You out there? All right.
Yes.
Nice. And the next is the best backcountry touring book, and that goes to carafield8@gmail. Cara, you there? Okay. No one there. And next one is, email is oaudia23. I guess everyone uses Gmail nowadays, huh? Come on, Hotmail.
I still have my Hotmail.
No one? All right. And Shay.m.mcdonough. Shay, anyone? Whew. It's not as exciting if it's not in person here. All right. Kelsey L space at Gmail. Kelsey? Wow. All right. KLENDRES@mtu.edu. Come on. We're going to give up soon and just give it all to the panelists. Okay. Next one is SAYERS 2727. All right. And that's the best backcountry touring. And last one we're going to do is the 2 tickets to the Wild Corn Shindig.
Well, Joe, hold
Oh.
on. You just gave away presidential skiing and backcountry touring, right?
Correct.
Let's throw it with the round out the threesome. Throw in a Granite Land raffle.
Oh, guidebook? Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to be left out of the books.
That goes to AODON15 @gmail. Anyone there? This is exciting. Come on. All right. Wish I had a better auctioneer's voice. Okay, the next are Granite Land, Elizabeth.Deeren. Are you out there? Hilary's leaving. She's had enough.
Oh, Squall's joining us.
All right, that'll get everyone back in. Okay. Squall.
Squall is here. So, Elizabeth Deeren is here.
Okay, great.
We're helping with the raffle, Joe.
Oh, 2 pups.
Are we raffling off puppies?
Maybe.
Let's see, that was 14. Okay, so wild corn, wild corn tickets. 156. B Smith 0512. Oh, there's a hot mail right there. Sorry, the puppies are not. How about a cat? Abby? Would you like a- okay, it looks like B Smith is there. All right. So that is
Where are you seeing B Smith, Joe?
in the raised his hand.
Oh,
I got a lot going on behind the scenes here. It's kind of crazy. Wish I had a puppy though. All right. And that's the end of the list. So I guess the easiest way to do it would be anyone that was called, and I've got a sort of list going here. I think I can track it, but if you send me an email, and my email should be in the invitation link you got to get into the get into the event. So send me an email and then we'll figure out if you're local to get your prize to you or ship it over to you. And yeah, that's it for the raffle. Thanks. Again, thanks Sarah for running all this, and I'll leave you to sign off.
awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go ski.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you. Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thank you all.
Great. Bye.
Bye.